Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I just want to make a few brief remarks. Last week, JP Chase announced a $100 million investment in the city of Detroit. And I just wanted to say that we made that investment because we believe in Michigan and we believe in Detroit. And we made that investment following the great efforts of many of you who are community leaders and have worked tirelessly in Detroit for a very long period of time. We also made that investment because we thought we were really well aligned after a period of study with the governor and the mayor and a lot of the initiatives that they've undertaken to try to make our city better. And one of the things that's part of our $100 million investment is what we're here to talk about today. And it's actually a big component of what we're all about. And it's workforce development and skills development to help with job readiness and to move the direction and the needle for the employment population in the city of Detroit. And we're really fortunate. Chauncey Lennon, who's going to run the session for us here, has been with the bank actually only a few months, but he joined us from the Ford Foundation, and he has largely spent his entire professional career in workforce development. And so he's done this all over the world. He has a wonderful resume, and he's going to lead you in a discussion with a couple of our guests about what we're going to try to do to further improve the workforce situation in Detroit. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for choosing to be here instead of outside in this beautiful weather. You all get a special extra point for that. So I'm very excited to be here today and to have the opportunity to talk with you about Chase's recent $100 million commitment to Detroit, and in particular about the workforce component of this commitment. But before we begin, I'd like to show you a video that describes why we're committed to Detroit and what we're planning. And I'll give you one spoiler alert. The video features not just John, but also Tasha Tabrin, who leads our work, philanthropic work in the region. So please go ahead and roll the video.
Oh, there are many things that make Detroit great. I'd start first and foremost with its people.
Detroit people have grit. They are persistent. They have tenacity.
Tough, hardworking, but friendly. I was born and raised in Detroit.
I'm a proud Detroiter.
Born, raised, educated.
I'm not from Michigan, I'm from Detroit.
Detroit is a classic American city.
Detroit's a city that has a really proud heritage.
The arts and the people, the work ethic.
The auto industry was born here. We have some of the best manufacturing and engineering talent in the world here.
It's a city where a lot of important things have happened.
But it's been through a number of really difficult periods. This city had almost 2 million residents. It's currently about 700,000. We've had a lot of blight. City services have struggled.
We've had challenges on the political leadership side. We've had challenges really since the mid-50s.
One of the biggest issues that we face is just the aggregate size of the task.
Detroit is almost 140 square miles when we look at it as a landmass. You can include Boston, Manhattan, and San Francisco in the city's borders and still have room around the edges.
Detroit needs investment. It needs consistent investment. It needs partnerships.
We know Detroit. Our history dates back over 80 years, and while we're doing a lot in Detroit, Detroit needs us to do more. Over the next 5 years, JP Chase is committing $100 million to Detroit.
This is the largest corporate investment that's ever been made in a city.
JP Chase is really on the leading edge of investing in Detroit's revitalization.
This capital will help build charter schools, affordable housing, help small businesses and neighborhoods throughout Detroit.
We are also going to help with workforce training, give people the skills to find jobs, but also to flourish in jobs.
When we look at cities across the country, small businesses end up creating more jobs and more economic growth than almost any other participant in the sector. So we're investing some of our small business expertise and philanthropic capital into businesses that will represent companies that are in neighborhoods across Detroit.
Some of our money is going to help with the completion of a big project called M1 Rail, which is going to connect the Midtown and the downtown areas.
This will be a streetcar-style rail project that will be a huge boon to new development that will increase job opportunities. One of the things that I think is really exciting about this partnership with JP Chase is that they really did their homework, and I think that's going to accelerate their ability to move the needle.
People are now realizing what so many of us who have been here for a long time knew, that there are so many jewels here. And now there is a business case being made. There's investment opportunities. I'm proud to see that JP Chase has decided to take this type of leadership.
I hope it will spark other companies to follow us and make similar commitments.
This is aggressive stuff that the bank is doing, and we are most appreciative. This allows us to do what we do to fulfill our own mission and purpose.
The people of Detroit aren't hoping for Detroit's future to be positive. They're banking on it, and so are we.
All right. Thank you. In a moment, I'm going to invite Jim Jacobs and Mike Henneke to join me on stage for conversation. But first, I want to make a few brief comments. First, I want to stress a couple points made in the video. Jobs and skills are critical. There can be no recovery without ensuring that Detroit's residents have access to the education and training that gives the skills needed to succeed in the growing sectors of the economy. And there can be no recovery if businesses do not have the skilled workforce they need to compete and prosper. So I cannot stress enough how this is critical, as John said, to what we're trying to accomplish in Detroit. Second, our goal is to work with all of you here in this room, to partner with the stakeholders in the fields we are working in workforce, as in all the areas we're investing. We want to understand how you see the challenges in front of us and the opportunities in Detroit. And our goal is that our dollars will add value and spur innovation to make the workforce system stronger. As was said in the video, again, we are all about doing our homework, and today is an opportunity to do some more homework on how we're going to address these challenges. Second, let me say a few words about how we see the challenge of closing the skills gap, both in Detroit and across the U.S. It will soon be June, and in June, it'll be 5 months from the official end of the recession. Yet, unemployment in the U.S. and in Detroit in particular remains high. Many employers still have a hard time filling job vacancies, and this is especially true when it comes to middle-skill jobs, jobs that require a high school degree but not a BA, and often a year or two of technical training. Middle-skill jobs are roughly half the jobs in our economy, and close to 70 million people are in middle-skill jobs. As a financial services firm working with businesses of all sizes and in all sectors, as a major employer, and as a partner to our community colleges and workforce training providers, we see closing the skills gap and providing meaningful career pathways to good-paying jobs as one of the most crucial issues of our time. This is why JP Chase recently committed $250 million to its unprecedented 5-year global workforce initiative called New Skills at Work. New Skills at Work is the largest ever private sector effort aimed at addressing the skills gap that exists across many industries, and where not enough trained workers have the specific skills to fill the jobs available. Closing the skills gap will not be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but we do know what success looks like, and we will be actively looking to partner with strategies that follow these principles. I'm going to talk about 3. First of all, New Skills at Work will involve working with groups of employers in sectors to create partnerships with education and training providers that train and hire job seekers. These workforce partnerships are critical to making sure that demand and supply are meeting in ways that meets the needs of everybody. Second, New Skills at Work will promote career skills like adaptability, leadership, and responsibility, in addition to the set of technical skills in demand. These are skills that are best taught outside of the classroom in applied experiences that come as close as possible, if not learned on the job. It is critical that employers be at the front and center of this effort to expand what we often call contextualized learning. And third, the piece that we know often is really critical to making things work better, is that we're going to support career pathways. Career pathways recognize that the best way to help job seekers, young and old, succeed is not by just getting them any job, but putting them on a track with a job that leads to, allows them to add more skills, stack credentials, and move on to better and better paying employment. To ensure that all this work is demand-driven, New Skills at Work will also produce a series of skills gap reports, and we'll be doing one in the Detroit region. These reports will explore workforce challenges specifically in markets across the country, and they will look at the mismatch between demand and supply using the best of existing data, so we get a real-time read on the sectors where we're seeing a mismatch between what employers are looking for and the skills available in the workforce. Ultimately, our goal is that job seekers of all ages have a clearer picture of where and what the good jobs are in their community, and better information about the pathways they need to follow to get to those jobs. And the other goal is that our employers have a pipeline of skilled labor that meets their workforce needs. Now I'd like to ask Jim and Mike to join me on stage. While they're coming up, I want to say a bit about them. So Jim Jacobs is the president of Macomb Community College and has worked there for over 40 years. He's a past president of the National Council of Workforce Education, among other things, and is currently serving on the Governor's Talent Investment Board, the Center for Automotive Research, Metropolitan Affairs Council, and the Detroit Institute of the Arts. Who knows when he has time for his day job. Michael Henneke is president of Phoenicia North America and a veteran of the automotive industry with more than 30 years of leadership experience. As president of Phoenicia North America, Henneke leads customer relationship management and program acquisition activity for all Phoenicia divisions, along with a long list of other things. He also serves on the board of the Original Equipment Suppliers Association and the National Association of Manufacturers. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage. So I feel a little bit like Stephen Colbert. This is my moment to run over here with my hands up. All right, so it is no accident that we've asked a leader from the demand side, from the employer side of this story, and a leader from the supply side, the training side, to come up here and start this conversation about what we need in Detroit. I cannot stress enough that we need to think about how we get the demand side to do a better job at signaling, about telling us what they need. By the same token, we need to do a better job on the supply side. We need to make sure that we end what the Secretary of Labor often calls our failing system of train and pray, and move to a system where people are trained for jobs that are in demand in their economy. So let me kick it off. I want to start with you, Mike. From your perspective, can you tell me what you see as the strengths of the workforce system in the Detroit region and what needs improvement?
Let me give you a little background first,
please.
so you'll have a flavor for who we are. We're based in Paris, France, and we have about 100,000 employees globally, operating in 34 countries with 340 sites. So we're the fifth largest auto supplier in the world that no one's ever heard of. But 30% of our business is in North America, and we have 20,000 employees in North America. 4,000 right here in the state of Michigan. I see my friend from Focus Hope, and I'm going to brag about them in a minute here. But what we're trying to accomplish, and maybe that's what I can bring to you, is what we do in other countries versus what's happening here, and why we're having some struggles in North America. I'm going to steal a line from, and not from Macomb Community College, but from Lawrence Tech, who I was sitting at dinner with last night. And he said, these kids come in and want to have chit-chat degrees. And I said, chit-chat degrees? He said, yeah, where they sit around and chit-chat, and they get a degree in chit-chat, and then they have no job skills. That we don't need any chit-chat degrees in our company. And the other thing that I think we need to change is the appearance of welding and working in the factories at the Ford Rouge years ago and all that. That's really not what manufacturing is anymore. Chauncey, you talked about the middle skills, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We make instrument panels, instrument seating, exhaust systems, front-end modules. All of that are highly sophisticated assemblies that require sophisticated people working in those facilities. If you walked into one of our manufacturing facilities, you wouldn't see welders and people with aprons on. You'd see people dressed in white shirts in a very clean environment using some very sophisticated equipment. So where do we get these people? Here's a sad example. We acquired a Ford facility in Saline, Michigan. It's about 1.5 million square feet with 2,000 employees. Oh, I see my partner, Andra Rush, there, who is part of this, and I'm going to brag about Andra in a second. But in that facility, we didn't have enough skilled workforce to transfer that facility. So we ended up having between 50 and 100 people coming from France or Spain or Germany to help facilitate what we couldn't find in North America. And that's been a dilemma for us, and to this day, we're still bringing people over. So what does France do that we don't do, or what does Germany do that we don't do? And I'm going on and on,
Sure.
but I just bring up one point. What the European community has is something called VIEs. VIEs are what we would probably call interns. However, these VIEs have already graduated. They submit their resume. We then go and say, we need a robotics person, we need an IT person, we need a supply chain person. We then glean through those resumes. Their social costs are taken care of. We give them a kind of a salary and a vehicle when they're here. And then they move on. And for instance, one of our plants in Macomb County is run by a former VIE. Those type of training, I'm old enough to remember, the Ford had trade schools and they trained people. That's not happening anymore, so the industry is going to have to do some of it itself. I kind of got lost in where I was going with it, but I think the training is more encouraged. European young people want the experience of living abroad in any country for a year to 2 years and get that experience. I was in a conference yesterday, and I was told the automotive industry isn't global. Well, it most certainly is global. I mean, we're operating in 34 countries. We are looking for plant managers in Iran. That's a little bit of a problem for us, but that's how global the industry can be. So people that work in our Fraser plant, for instance, not too far from Macomb Community College, can actually go then work in our plant in Berlin, if need be. And that's the kind of cross-training that we see across the different countries, and that we don't see it so much here.
Thank you. Jim, from your perspective, what do you see as the strengths and the challenges that you're facing in the Detroit region?
Let me pick up on
Sure.
a few points that Mike made. I mean, I think the major challenge that we face is the ability to consistently train and educate people with real jobs in mind. I mean, one of the things that we're doing now is we're recovering from almost a 10-year period where there were very little work in the Detroit metropolitan area, and the kind of way in which a lot of our interactions that go on with business and have been in the past has been often really short term. In other words, you need welders now, you need CNC operators, but 5 years ago, programs were stopped because there was nobody getting hired. What we need is what does exist in Europe. That is the concept of social partners. That is, in the long-term interest, we have to recognize that there's going to be growth in these communities if we take a view which says that, yeah, there is a future in industrial work, there is a future in manufacturing. That future needs to be looked at over a long period of time, and it's worthwhile keeping programs going. That's the second thing we need is a common language and an understanding of that. That is that we have a way in which in business and in education that we start to talk the same language. A lot of times we make the mistake of seeing training as a very narrow perspective. You want somebody who's a machinist, we'll get you somebody. But what Mike is saying now is that the bar has been raised. It's a very different kind of issue. It's an issue which is not just hands-on skills. It's the ability to work in teams. It's the ability to communicate and interact with people. It's really project management skills. And one of the things that I think we're often guilty of on the education side is that we've kind of, in a sense, siloed vocational education. And we've said, that's really for the underprepared people. That's really for the kind of people who really can't make it in society. Reality is that it's for everyone, and it's part of the reason you go to school, that our definition of student success should be not the chit-chat classes, it should be, in fact, employment and earnings, and that every program that we do should lead to employment and earnings, and that the kinds of skills that we have in the short term in terms of technical issues should be surrounded by long-term adjustment and comprehensive kind of educational backgrounds, and move people not just from a job, but yes, to a career. So they kind of discover what they want to do in school, connect with a particular job, and then be able to advance.
That's great. This is a very, this is exactly why we wanted from both of you to hear both sides of this challenge. Let me ask a related question. What are the next steps? What do you have in place? Who else needs to be at the table? How do we build this system that you're describing?
I told Chauncey a cute story, and it's a true story. When I came to Philadelphia about 8 or 9 years ago, and they had the list of universities they would recruit from. Now, mind you, we're a manufacturing company, and those schools listed by our colleagues in France were Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Stanford. And no offense, Chauncey, but not everyone wants to live in New York and be an investment banker. I mean, and don't have those skill sets. So we went through this, and I said, wait a second. There's community colleges in this area. There's Wayne State. There's Ferris State, which is a great plastic program. Northwood, who is an automotive program. Maybe we could look a little closer. So we changed what we're doing that. Secondly, what we had in our company, and this is not a sales pitch for our company, but we had what we called Philadelphia University. And those people that were starting out perhaps as an hourly worker and didn't want to be an hourly worker could then take these classes and get to the next step. All of our plant managers, I'd say 90%, have come up through the hourly workers. And they become a gap leader, and then a larger leader, and then next thing you know, they're plant manager. That's happened to 3 of our plants in Michigan. So we started just this year Philadelphia University in North America. And what's going to happen if, for instance, if you're a designer or would-be designer, you would start attending designer classes and work your way into that environment. It's a shame that we couldn't find the kind of resources that we needed. And my colleague from Focus Hope is going to yell at me because he knows they're right downtown in Detroit that we haven't utilized enough. But that's the kind of thing Focus Hope is doing. And we can go to them and say, here's what we're looking for. And they'll say, we can train you. I want to bring up another point. Andrew Rush is our partner. We started a partnership called Detroit Manufacturing System. Andrew, could you stand up real quick? I know, not to embarrass you. But so Andrew opens up a plant in Detroit with us and has a lot of people, and everybody's excited about going to work again. And what has happened, and what's been a dilemma a little bit, is some of these people hadn't worked for years. And all of a sudden they're I've got to be there at 6:30 in the morning. Boy, I didn't have to do this last year. And I got to leave here at 2:30 and I got to be back again tomorrow? Yeah, that's the way it's working. And so somehow, through education, we're going to have to let people know that we all have to get up every day and go to work that day. Cute story, and then I'll stop to bore you. In Mexico, it's been so busy, the auto industry is great. We couldn't find people to come to work on Monday when they worked on Saturday. So every Monday, whoever showed up on Saturday was eligible for a flat screen TV and a drawing. So it was $500, but everybody showed up on Monday. I don't know if we have to do that, Andrew, or not, but maybe we need to give out flat screen TVs once a week. But that's the kind of mindset we've got to change, that it can be fun and exciting. And I think that falls not just on the educators, but us in the industry to make it a little more glamorous.
So look, I think I hear this across the country when I have conversations like this, that first you need investment from the employer, but you need to have partnerships with other training groups because you're not going to do the whole thing yourself.
Yep.
And that there's always this real need for more communication. We don't do a good enough job telling the story of these opportunities, the ladders that you can climb if you start as an hourly worker, and that's a real priority everywhere. But Jim, I'd be curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I think very importantly, no one likes to be recruited to a dead-end job, that they see opportunity. And one of the things that we really haven't done a very good job in is not just getting people employed, but to see where can they go from there. In other words, really the question of the skills that you have now and what you're going to evolve to and what you can do in the future is very, very important. Now, there's where there has to be a close tie between education and business, because we don't know sometimes where those careers are going to go. And one of the things which I think in talking about in the future, what we really need is not only for us to continue talking to each other, but to us to have the ability to do some more workplace learning, internships, placing younger people and our educators into positions where they know some of the developments in Mike's facilities and they know where things are going. And so that we have the time also to do the adjustments. I'll use a quick example that many of us are involved in now in the auto industry. We know that steel is being used less. We know that there's going to be composites and plastics in auto. What does that do to all our welding programs? What does it do to our welding instructors? How do we make those changes? We have time. It's going to be steady, but we need to work together on this. I think we're at the point, especially in Michigan as a whole, but also I think in the Detroit metropolitan area where that's going to become a reality. As Mike said, no one company can do this by itself, no one school, and I do want to mention Focus Hope as well, no one community organization. I think we all need to work kind of together. There's things which community-based organizations do far better than educational institutions, and we really need to have those kinds of ties.
So one challenge we face in this country is the data quality when it comes to workforce issues. It's hard to know exactly, as you're just, it's hard to forecast. We don't do a good job of measuring the gaps between the jobs that are available and the skills in the labor market. How are we going to know that we've done a better job? If we work towards creating more commonality, more conversation between the supply and demand sides, how will we know? Mike, how will you be able to tell that you have an easier time finding the workers you need? And how are you going to know when you're doing a better job placing people in growing sectors?
You forewarned me on that question, and I struggled with it a couple of days ago. How do we know we're doing better? The obvious thing is, what's our turnover? If we have people into our company and they're gone in a short period of time, it's very difficult, and we haven't satisfied their needs. I think I was talking to your counterpart at Oakland Community College, and he was interviewing some freshmen at Oakland Community College. He said most of them had no idea why they were going to school other than, hey, we need to go to school. So what I told him, and we'll make the same commitment, we'll come out to those campuses, say, here's what we're looking for, here's where we think you can go. Our company has something called succession planning. Each person, regardless of what they do, has to look for their person who succeeds them. And maybe we can show a career path to excite them. The second part of your question is, how do we know we're succeeding? Our turnover is still not, you would think in this environment that people are all looking for jobs, but it's simply not the case. If you go on our website, and you'll see that we have a lot of openings all around the world. And unfortunately, it's in program management, it's in logistics, and it's in information technologies. They're pretty high-tech jobs that you don't need an MBA out of Harvard to get into that, but maybe a degree, and I'm told not to use vocational, but maybe a lesser degree that allows you to succeed. My son never finished college, but he's building luxury homes in Bay Harbor, and he's very happy doing that and doing very well. So not everybody wants to do what I do, and some days I don't either. But I don't know how to tell. Time will tell whether our Farisa University will help, and whether this new program of going around to the schools are going to help. Yeah. There's a little school called Crystal Ray in downtown Detroit, if you've ever heard of. Yeah. We've got associated with. And these students pay for their education by coming and working. And their graduation success is wonderful. That's kind of a neat thing that they're doing. And then they can come out and say, boy, I like this. I kind of like this auto industry. It's not so bad. Again, there's other industries than auto, but that's where I'm at.
Jim, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, well, it sort of mirrors some of the ways in which Mike talked. The first thing is that for our students to have, in the back of their minds, some sort of game plan as they enter the school. That is, what's the purpose of school? A lot of times the question is always raised, well, I'm going to school to get a good job. The fact that you put the time in the school and get a degree doesn't necessarily guarantee you anything. You have to have a plan, a strategy within the school to make the school work for you. So having students who come with a clearer idea of that. Now, one part of getting that clear idea is having the interaction with work and the workplace as something which is part of their educational experience, so that they know a little bit more about careers. The second thing is, and this is on our end, I think we tend to over-specialize. We tend at early age, or especially at a community college, to offer hundreds of programs which are really confusing students, not really making it clear that a simple or broader categories where then an individual is prepared for manufacturing and then can go within that specialized skills which may be needed in Mike's company but are not going to get a job in another company. So having a strategy as a student, having some broad experiences, and this is for entry-level people, and then moving on. Now, I think that the challenge for us also, though, is not just the younger student. It's the kind of people that Mike just talked about. There are literally thousands of people in the Detroit metropolitan area who, are in need of a job, in need of a full-time job, in need of a career. The challenge is, how do we get adults back into the workforce in the most efficient and effective way in an education process? And if we can start to do that, then I think we do have an education system that's pretty functional.
Can I? Of course. You just triggered a thought. Thank you for J.P. Morgan Chase adding this M1 rail. That's a great idea. But one of the issues we have is transportation. Yeah. Let's run the rail out Gratiot if we can. You got all this money now, so let's do this. Let's run the. That's another the other.
You can hire Macomb students to build.
There we go. We got to get it.
Give them something to do.
We have a plant in Fraser, relatively nice suburb of Detroit. People don't have ways to get there. So we have transportation issues. We can train all day long, but they can't get. You don't have that problem in Europe. There's mass transportation. They can get there, ride their bike to the train station. So we need to get transportation. It's nice that it'll be in Midtown Detroit, but we need them out in Sterling Heights and in Mount Clemens and Saline, and let's get these rails going. That's my pitch to JP.
Well, you spoke about this earlier, but I'd like to pick up on this theme and get your perspective, Jim, as well. When you travel to other places, what do you see working that really could be help Detroit, right? Transportation, critical. What are other kinds of things that are happening, either on the education front or the employer engagement front, that we think we could bring to Detroit that would make things stronger?
Let me start with, a common definition, common standards. Welding, 17 different kinds of certifications. We should have some agreement, through the industry, through the supply chain. This is what we need. IT, these are the kinds of areas that we really need to focus on. Getting that kind of, and we've seen that in other places, and we have a great advantage there. We do have not only just manufacturing, we have a dominant industry. It is the auto industry, and the kinds of needs in IT and auto we really need to kind of look at. So building your educational institutions from a sector strategy, I think it becomes an important issue. And it's not just K through 12 or high schools, it's also post-secondary and how we see that.
Mike, I'd like to get you to say something about your decision to invest in Freesia University. Many firms don't make those kinds of commitments. Tell us a little bit about why you felt like that was something that was worth doing.
Well, I mentioned success in planning. For instance, we needed plant managers. We couldn't find plant managers. That's a tough job. Anybody who's ever been in the manufacturing system. So where was this pool? We want to have potential plant managers sitting in the wings, 3 or 4 of them ready to go to get promoted. Our growth's been pretty dramatic. But that was in all aspects of it. We want somebody to be backfilling every space with 3 or 4 people ready to go, and we couldn't find them. I think we were looking in the wrong places, but I think that we decided we're gonna have to train ourselves. It's a little, I want to be politically correct here, you'll see a little bit of different culture in the United States. If you were to walk through some of our plants in Poland or Romania, there's more of a, boy, I'm just happy to have a job. And I think, and I'm sure that they want a better life, but I think that here we want a little more. we want to see a career path, and our expectations might be a little higher. So we have to provide that a little more to you, what you're saying is job satisfaction. And that's what we have to do to make it something worthy rather than just, I'm going to get a paycheck and go home, and because that's no fun for anybody all day long. So that's what we're trying to do. I guess that's it.
All right. So let me invite questions from the audience. I know we have lots of people here who've also thought about these issues for a long time, so I'd love to bring everyone into the conversation. We have someone right here.
Yeah.
Please tell us your name and where you work.
Okay. My name is Susan Kruger. I am an author and a teacher consultant. And with the discussion of STEM education throughout this conference, my real concern is, are we doing anything to actually teach students how to learn? Because if we teach students how to learn, then their ability to embrace STEM education is far easier, as well as anything else, whether arts or whatever, but specifically STEM. Any thoughts on teaching students how to learn, or do you have any programs in place where you specifically?
Well, I mean, I think partly teaching people how to learn is connected to what's the purpose of learning. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we have a machinist training program, and it's called machinist training program, but 7 months of it is math. But it's never called math, because if you said it was math, you wouldn't be, you know. So I think you embed contextually into various courses lots of learning and STEM, et cetera. But the purpose of learning, I mean, and I use the best example, and this is something, you know, the prize community college programs all over the country, and it's true in the metropolitan area, are the nursing programs. And who's in the nursing program? Basically, it's usually a woman who's raised a family, who's come back to school, and they take science, they take biology, they take math, but they're driven by the desire to become a nurse, and they master all that stuff. So part of what I think the question of learning technologies is that really you embed it in an occupational goal, and then the mastering of it becomes a little bit easier, because you can always raise in the back of your mind the question, what is this for? You know, why do I have to learn this? And then you learn it.
No, I would very much underscore Jim's point. I think when I look across the country and I see the rise of, let's call it, efforts around working and learning, or that is really capturing both this sense that you engage people by making work, sort of job focused. But really, what you're doing is showing somebody how learning is really something they do over the course of their lifetimes, over the course of a career, and how they start at a certain stage, and that stage may be at a local community-based organization, or it may be at a community college. But the goal is that you're working, you're learning over time, you're gaining credentials, those stack on top of each other, and you end up with a BA over the course of a decade. It looks very different than our traditional model of high school, 4 years of college, BA. But that feels like a very important set of investments to create that other system that we haven't made in this country that we need to think about making as soon as possible. Questions over here.
My name is Ken Winchell. I'm the retired editor and publisher of the Petoskey News Review. And my question has to do more with Jim, because now in my second career I'm teaching at our community college, and my question is, how do you afford the technology needed to train these students in specialized fields that were mentioned, and what kind of funding sources do you have for professional development for those teachers who have to keep up in those fields? In our case, we don't have a lot of funding in a smaller rural northern Michigan community college. I'm sure you're sitting on big bags of cash down there in Macomb County.
We're loaded. Macomb County, we
I can become president.
Legislators who give us all
I'd like to become president of our college, so I need the secret of what your success is.
I'll be real brief, but I think it is always a problem. But I think we also create part of that problem. We don't go to Mike or companies and say, look, there's a lot of big specialized stuff here. We can't do it. In some ways, we don't want to do it, because, in fact, it's better to do some of the specialized work at the workplace. I think we tend, in education, to have a little bit of a fetish around equipment. That we think the equipment is the question. What you raised, I think, is it's the teachers that really need. If a good instructor, a good faculty person is a person who can not only be able to teach the particular subject matter, but to have a view, to impart a view of the industry or part of view of the area of expertise, so that a student feels comfortable. So it would be far more important to get instructors into facilities on a regular basis, or, and Mike may kill me for saying this, get some of his people to work for us. And that way, I mean, community colleges are correctly criticized for having a lot of part-time instructors. But we actually value part-time instructors, because some of our part-time instructors work full-time in the industries that they come from and really can talk a lot about what's very common, that many of our instructors who've been out of the workplace for 20 years probably couldn't do some of the jobs that are currently existing in facilities. So I think there's a real problem there. But I think raising the problem not as a college problem, but as a social issue that institutions can work with. And I know Barbara Rossman from Henry Ford Hospital. I mean, we work closely. She can do things in her hospital that we could never replicate in a class, nor should we. And it's a public policy question as well. Why should the taxpayers be consistently spending money on very sophisticated equipment that often doesn't get utilized to the degree it should?
And I would just add on this point that when we look across the country, in California, one of our partners is Sutter Healthcare, and in the healthcare industry, especially on nursing, it's actually you earn more as a nurse than you do as a nurse trainer, and so there's had to be a set of very innovative programs where you're sort of work release, building the capacity of the system to actually train new nurses, and it's involved a tremendous amount of collaboration between employers and community colleges. And again, I think you're going to face exactly these issues as you see demand growing in tech and other advanced manufacturing sectors. We have a question over here.
Gunder Myron, Wayne County Community College District. Just a thought first and then a question. If about 80% of the jobs of the future require some work beyond high school, associate degree or a baccalaureate or advanced degree, and then also if we take the statistic that perhaps 2/3 of the students coming out of the high schools are not college ready, we have sort of a major dilemma there. But add to that then the Detroit situation specifically, or for that matter, almost all urban metropolitan areas, and that is the problem that what Curtis Ivory at Wayne calls the multiracial democracy movement. And the idea being that we have to factor in the fact that there are still massive disparities between the races in terms of wealth, income, economic opportunity, residential isolation, a whole range of these persistent and entrenched disparities that exist even though a lot of progress has been made in the civil rights movement. So I think we have to face up to this question of how we shape a multiracial democracy, because otherwise these disenfranchised groups simply don't have a chance to participate in the economic mainstream.
Jim, do you want to?
answer?
Do you want to answer?
I certainly agree with, Gunder knows well about these issues. And the question of accessibility to work and the question of all the things that you mentioned, having a child care system that's functional, having a transportation system is functional, having some way in which, large numbers of people who are not close to the workplace know even where jobs are, and having a great deal of support systems is clearly, part of this. The technical training piece may be one 1/8 of the tip of the iceberg in a sense. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
I would add that I feel, from the JP Morgan Chase's perspective, is we see this jobs piece as one that's very tractable. Again, I couldn't agree more that those are all huge issues that will impede success. At the same time, we need to think about what can we move now, what can actually be done in the short term, and getting this friction out of the labor market in which employers are sitting there saying, we want these skills, and training providers are there saying, we want to train, and job seekers looking for jobs. It feels like that's one piece of it that we can move, and with that movement, hopefully build momentum to address some of these other challenges. We have another question right here?
Somebody ask Mike a question.
Sure.
No, you want it.
You're doing well.
Larry Schlack, Kalamazoo, mostly retired educator. A comment and a suggestion. The comment has been alluded to that too often we make the kids who want to go into technical education feel second class. And we give the impression that if you say you're college prep, you're first class, anything else is second class. We've got to get beyond that. Suggestion. Instead of a high school diploma, which virtually tells us nothing about a person, a student, what if we had a skills set inventory that you graduated with? How good are you on collaboration? We talk a lot about that. How good are you on critical thinking as well as grade level? What is your skills set? That's my suggestion.
Mike, do you want to talk about how you guys think about hiring?
No, I was thinking about Kalamazoo. I went to the Harvard of the Midwest, Western Michigan University. So, so you don't all have to go to Harvard, right? No, your point's valid. I agree with that. And as I said yesterday in the conference we were in, that they don't want to use the word vocational anymore because it's really not. Frankly, I couldn't run some of our assembly lines. They're so sophisticated. With an example, for a BMW seat for the X5, there's 3,000 possible variations of that seat. So if one little thing glitches on that line, you're shipping a gray seat to a guy who ordered a black seat, or vice versa. But those are the kind of things that these vocational people, if you will, are working on. It's sophisticated equipment. The welding equipment that we use now is amazing, and the robotic systems that these are skilled jobs. So if you have a degree that says college prep, we don't even look at that. We come in, we do our own testing, and we say, where do you want to be, and let's get a career path going. Maybe, it's interesting to comment back to the gentleman in the back. As a French company, we're not even aware of the situations, or they're not even aware of the situations you bring up. That's been difficult for me to bring diversity and that to our culture. Charities are unknown in socialist countries. Why do we do charity things? We have something called Fuels, where we raised 1 million pounds of food last year. Why are you doing that in America, one of the richest companies in the world? Well, because there are people that are hungry. So those are the kind of mindsets we're changing within our culture. I can't answer for all the others, but diversity, if you walked in my office, you'd think you were in the United Nations because we have people from all around the world. But so that's something that I can embrace and educate my peers in France. So it was a good point, though, and I heard both your comments loud and clear.
Other questions?
Brad Hoos with Grand Circus. We're an Inspired Learning Institute. And my question for you is, how can we do a better job at exposing youth to these opportunities at a young age? Because we've done a lot of work with high school students, and what you see is these students have no idea about these great opportunities that are out there. So 2 questions are, one, really, how can we do a better job of exposing these youth at a young age? And 2 is, what's the magic age, if there is one, to try to start getting in and exposing youth where they're at a stage where they're ready to understand, hey, I want to go towards a career. I want to get exposed to a career.
That's a great question.
I don't think there's a magic age. I think you embed it in all aspects of the curriculum. And I mean, again, I think we've made, and I don't know exactly where this comes from in educational theory, but we made this kind of belief that going to school, putting in time in school will somehow reward you with a better life, etc. And certainly there's an element of that that's true. That is, people with PhDs make more money than high school dropouts. On the other hand, the question of satisfaction of life, of stability, of success and the definition of success and the value of your own self-worth is somehow involved in occupations, et cetera, whatever those occupations are. And one of the great things, Mike talks about other countries, you go to Europe, somebody who sells you wine, might be an apprentice, who really knows a lot about wine and feels very comfortable in that job. That concept that you have a career, and that's part of what school is, to create that career, and that's part of what you do on all levels, is something which I think we tend to vacillate on, and I think one of our opportunities is to reach down into the primary level of school and to make that part of life. Now, here's another part of the dimension that makes it very complicated. In many cases, the parents, and this is the point that Gunder's right, the parents of students often have no careers. So it's hard to really do learning at home if parents don't value it or know about those careers. I mean, one of the paradoxical problems that we face in the Detroit area, and we see this in our own recruiting, is that the kids from families where they come out of auto workers' backgrounds, those are the families that least want their kids to go into the auto industry because they've had experience with downturns and all that. So how you overcome that becomes, I think, a huge challenge.
I think to follow up, though, what we'll do, and I've committed that, we'll bring people into our facilities. We'll show them what they're doing, and I think it's high school age, maybe 10th graders. We show them design, take them some of the plants, see what's going on. I think they'd be surprised because you see the old image of a manufacturing facility. It's not that great. So,
I would add that we see in terms of J.P. Morgan Chase as an employer, some of our most innovative offices really think about how they create apprenticeships, not just for people with degrees, college degrees, but also high school graduates. So you're creating pipelines at all levels into the firm. And then if you're going to have an apprenticeship for high school graduates, you have to start connecting to the middle schools around, these are opportunities for you to think about through your high school career. So, I think we are very committed to this and want to lead other firms in thinking about how we create more infrastructure that thinks about how you educate young people about different types of work pathways. There were some questions over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Davis, and most of my work has been in the human resources and workforce development field. I am proud to say that I have, through my talent acquisition work, been able to secure some very successful candidates from both the Focus Hope as well as the Macomb program. So great job there. I've seen it in action, and it is wonderful. And I've actually had some conversations with your prior chief HR officer at Forcia, so I know the work that you're doing there as well. So thank you very much for doing that. My question is really surrounding these candidates and applicants. We are truly changing the worker today, and it's no longer that folks come into a company and work one place for 30 years and do the same job. And what I am finding is that I have to often educate them on asking them that question, I think that has come up a number of times today already. What's the difference between a job and a career? And oftentimes they can't answer that question. Just because they come in as a technician one doesn't mean that they might not be plant manager one day. And I think that we need to do some training at an earlier point, helping them to understand the difference between a career and a job. So I'm wondering if either within the succession planning program at Forcia or within the machinist training program at Macomb Community College, if that kind of conversation comes up and you kind of help them to think that way earlier than by the time they get to us as employers.
I'll start one. And some of our employees don't like it. I'll give an example. We have a financial officer who has to be cross-trained now in the manufacturing. He's happy being a financial officer, but I'm sorry, in our company, you have to cross-train. And he's going to move. There's another fellow who is in Detroit and very happy, is going to be moving to Paris. I know it sounds terrible, but but when you have a 10th grade daughter, you don't want to move to Paris right now, So he'd like to wait 2 more years. But it's mandatory to cross-train at a period of time. One other example, and you probably were talking about Mark Schmink, but someone could work on the line, and it's happened in Saline already, and already become a shift supervisor in a year and a half. And their next step would then become the next plant manager at a smaller plant, and it happens. It's a requirement of our company, and I think that gives them more of a career path. And if you're a robotics guy and you say, I can't stand this, but I'd rather be over in accounting, that can happen too. Because that way they can kind of feel what's going on.
We're actually changing some of our definitions on the jobs that we have. We have counselors, but now we have what we call navigators. And navigators are people who come out of the sector, and they help, in a sense, by just saying, here's some of the opportunities, here's some of the things that I did when I worked in that industry. And so you get a sense of the broad. Let me just say let me quickly segue, because I know we're running out of time, because there are a lot of public policy people here. I think part of this question is there is a policy part of this, and it gets to how we can, in order for good relationships to occur between educational institutions and businesses, both sides needs to be stable. A lot of what we've gone through in the last 10 years has been a lot of instability on public education. You know, a lot of interventions that have been 6 months long and then reversing in a different way, and a lot of fads, and quite frankly, a lot of attacks on public education. And that needs to stop. We need to have a long-term commitment that the schools matter and that education matters, and that we're going to be working together. Once we can take that long-term perspective, I think we have a much brighter future.
One last question over here.
Oh, they got to hold the mic, because, you know, I might hit him, Glenn. As Mike introduced, we're partners with Detroit Manufacturing. The cool thing is we've hired primarily from the city of Detroit with an average unemployment of 18 months. That means some of the people that we have on our teams haven't ever worked, haven't never seen the modeling of work. And so just the job is just the beginning, and defining what a career is versus a job, and what are the potentials that you can create. We have challenges on just that scope, and how do you support all the essential skills besides the critical apprentice skills. You have those essential skills. What we're challenged with is, how do we change the perception of, if you take an automotive industry or a mining industry, from a dark, dirty, dull, and dangerous to an exciting, innovative, collaborative career that can give you skills that can cross all these industries. And the Department of Commerce, I sit on that board, and we are challenged with, how do we change that perception? How do you close the skills gap? And we're finally, at least in the federal government, that is a slow government to move things, but there's 46 training programs coming out of 5 departments, and they're all funding 46 different outcomes and 46 different ways of training and not connecting with the business field. So I would love the stackable skills question, but how do we change that marketing? Because we are finding it is the parents that we have to start with, elementary and preschool, and get them excited. So Mike doesn't know this right now, so I'm putting him on the spot, but we're going to put catwalks in our plant so we can bring elementary every single day, so they can see exactly what's happening and see the art of the possible. Because if you've been in a desolate city and you've not seen that, it's very hard to think education matters if you did work real hard and you didn't see that outcome. So we have to set that image and dream. And one of the cool jobs I have is to push, how do we market that? And supposedly we'll get it funded. So we're like talking to TV producers for cartoons, but also that how it works. We're also finding that if everyone would just say, I'll take 2 young students and I'll be their mentor, it doesn't take a lot of time, but just caring about them can start setting the wave. But I'm open for any ideas you have that you say, snap, right now, if we did these 2 things, we would see dramatic results in 5 to 10 years. Do you have that idea? Or anyone in the room?
Anyone.
I'll follow Andra.
Let's frame that as the thought to go away with, and people can follow up. But this has been a great conversation. In my mind, the sign of a great panel is when you could stay and ask more questions for another hour, and I feel like we could sit here and keep going and going and going. So thank you all for your input, and thank you to Mike and Jim for great insights.
Great. Thank you.